Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. This is episode 7 of the video series where I critique and process your image. Now, today we're taking a look at this image from Debbie. Now, it's a pretty cool scene. We got this dilapidated cabin in here, and it kind of looks like it might be out in the middle of nowhere. So it's kind of a neat scene to photograph. Now, one thing I always try to stress is when you approach a scene, you should determine what is the most interesting thing in that scene. And you want to make sure that you show off that most interesting thing the best way possible in your photography. You could use, rule of thirds, you could do leading lines, things like that to try to really show off that thing that's super interesting, whatever it may be. On the other hand, whatever is in the scene that isn't interesting, whatever really wouldn't catch the viewer's eye, you want to minimize that. You try to eliminate it completely if you can. If you can't, then you just want to make sure that it's just not dominating the image. Now, in this case, the cabin's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting looking. But the sky is very boring today. Now, if this was, thunder clouds rolling in, then this would be a great way to frame this scene. But we really just have kind of uniform gray clouds, so it's pretty boring. So what you need to do is when you approach this scene, you got to say, okay, the cabin's cool, the clouds stink. So I got to minimize the clouds. So you really got to get the focal length and or move your body to get the spot where you really take that sky out of the picture as much as possible, and you're concentrating on the cabin more so. So, you know, it's what I always say is working the scene. So you take this shot and you look at it, yeah, okay. So then you keep moving around and you maybe get closer to the cabin. You take some different shots from different angles. And also, I always try to encourage people, don't always shoot right at eye level, standing straight up, shooting straight ahead. Try getting down on your knees real low, shoot up at things. If you have the capability of getting up high and shooting down on something, that would be interesting too. So always look at different angles to shoot at things, not only different focal lengths and things like that. So we still have this image. What could we do with it? Well, first of all, I think we're just going to have to crop it. We got to get rid of a lot of that sky because it's really not that compelling. Now, we could try to replace the sky with another sky, but that would be difficult because it's kind of a winter scene and we have no leaves on the trees, so the sky pretty much shows through these trees. So it would make it very difficult to replace the sky effectively and make it look realistic. And I don't think it would be worth the trouble. I don't think it would add that much to this scene to replace the sky with something else. So we'll crop it. Now first I'm going to go down and like I normally do is I'm going to do lens corrections first. And then I'm going to get the crop tool. And as far as the rule of thirds, Debbie did fine. We have the cabin pretty much centered on the left vertical rule of thirds line, and the intersection point between that horizontal and vertical is the cabin's just below it. I mean, it's not too bad. But we just want to get rid of this sky. There's just too much of it. So I'm going to keep the cabin down on the lower third. And it's now going to be coming more towards the middle, but it's still more towards the left third than it is towards the right third. So we're going to just try to get it over there. And I think if we get the the golden spiral, and I look at different angles of that, you could see how it ends up right here. So that's not too bad right there. So I think this crop would be fine. So we're going to stop right there. So that's our crop. Now, the other thing I want to mention too is that we have some like twigs or something coming up into the image. So you really have to be real aware when you're taking a picture. I always encourage all my students when they put their eye to the viewfinder, really kind of press your eye in so you're seeing as far left as possible, as far right as possible, up and down, and see if there's anything bleeding into the shot. And you should get rid of it. Now, what I would typically do, like I wouldn't have, I would have hopefully got rid of that right when I took the picture. But if I have this in there, then I would take it over into Photoshop and get rid of that. And actually, I'll probably do that later just to show you how that's done. I am going to process this image completely in Lightroom just to show you how we do it in Lightroom. Then I think that actually the plugin that I would use for this is Nik Silver Efex Pro. I think that, in my opinion at least, it's one of the best, if not the best, black and white plugins for Lightroom and Photoshop around. But I'm going to do a complete process in Lightroom, and then we'll, at the end, do this other stuff I'm talking about. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to start out in the basic panel, and I'm going to pull highlights down, and then I'm going to just push shadows around and see what it looks like. And it's pretty, Debbie did a great job exposing the shot, so I don't really have to move stuff too much. I am going to convert this to black and white in Lightroom because I think it would be a better black and white image. But I just want to turn vibrance and saturation up here just a little, just to see what it might look like, give me an idea. Sometimes that might take me in a different direction, but we'll just see. We're going to go to the tone curve, and I'm going to try medium contrast. Then I'm going to try strong contrast. I like strong contrast. And then I'm going to get a quick white point by holding in the Shift key and double clicking on the word whites and double clicking on the word blacks to get the quick black point. I think the whites are just a little bit too white, so I'm going to pull those down. And let's see. That's just for the heck of it. I just want to see what it looks like with the cloudy um, white balance, and that's just too warm, so I'm going to put that back. Now you could change it to black and white right here, but I prefer to do it in the HSL Color B&W tab. When you do it here, you have these controls right at your fingertips, and this is the black and white mix. So whatever, let's say, is green in the image, if you take the green slider, you're actually going to affect the luminosity of the green. So moving it to the right will make it brighter, moving it to the left will make it darker. And you'll find that grass is typically more yellow than green as far as Lightroom is concerned. So we could actually affect things directly with these sliders and try to get some depth to the image. And I always talk about trying to get some depth to your images because it's a two-dimensional product when you're looking at a picture, even if you're looking on a computer screen or you're looking at it on framed on the wall. But you'd like to add some depth to it so it gives the illusion that it goes off into that z-axis, into the wall or into your computer. So we're going to move these around, see what they do. Some won't do anything, some will do a little more than others. I'm going to go back up to the basic panel, and I'm going to add some clarity now, like that. The other thing I like to do sometimes, especially when you have old wood like this, is I'll get the brush tool, and I'm going to reset the brush by double clicking on effects, and I'm going to take the clarity slider and I'm going to move it all the way to the right. Now I could readjust that, and I'm going to get a brush and I'm going to brush this like mega strong clarity onto the cabin here, like that. And then I'm going to right click on that and duplicate it just to make it a little heavier. Now it really darkened up some parts of it, so I'm going to get the shadows and I'm going to open up the shadows just a little bit on that. So that just kind of gives it a little more rustic detail when you do something like that. Now I mentioned a couple times that I'm not a big fan of the graduated filter in Lightroom. Now I'm in a minority when it comes to that. Most people love the graduated filters in Lightroom, but even back in the days of film photography, I wasn't a big fan of graduated filters on cameras that you'd put right on the camera lens to, change the color of the sky and things like that. I just didn't think they looked very natural. Now, in this case, because the sky is so bright, it might be, oops, that's crop tool. It might be optimum to try something here. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on the word effect to reset the sliders. And I'm going to take this contrast slider and I'm going to pull it down. I'm going to start up over here in the corner and kind of pull down that way. And like that. Looks like more maybe of storm cloud over here. And we're going to turn contrast up or down. We'll turn it up a little, and we'll add a little clarity. And then I'm going to get a new one, and I'm going to come from this direction, like that. And we're going to try to match it a bit by pulling that exposure down, turning clarity up, like that. And I think that is okay with the graduated filters. Now, one thing you could try to do is we need to add that depth I'm talking about. And so far it looks okay. We did all right with the graduated filter, seem to get more tonal variation in those clouds in the background. The brush with clarity really high added a lot more like tonal detail onto the cabin, which seemed to give it a little depth. Now, another little trick you could do is if you get the brush tool, and we're going to get a new brush tool, double click on new, and we're going to reset everything by double clicking on effect, is if you turn exposure up a little and you get yourself a fairly big brush in this case, I usually like to come in from one of the corners, and you kind of then vary the size of your brush a little bit, and you kind of add this kind of line through here like that. Then what you would do is you would get a new brush and you would take exposure down slightly, and then on either side of that brighter line I just drew, you would kind of draw a darker line. And it just adds kind of a tonal variation to the grass, which was very uniform green. And it just makes it a little more interesting. Now, the only other thing I guess I could do with this in Lightroom, I guess to finish it off, is to go to Effects and add a vignette. Now, I always forget detail, I'm sorry. And what I like to do with detail is I like to zoom in, and then I'll add sharpening. Now, there's always like a debate. Should you add sharpening before noise reduction? The general consensus is that you should do noise reduction first all the time because you'd be sharpening noise. That's very true if you're using a plugin, like I use usually Topaz Denoise. So I wouldn't sharpen the image at all in Lightroom. As a matter of fact, I pull sharpening down to 0, then send the image to Denoise and remove noise because it's easier to get rid of the noise if you didn't sharpen it. If you're just working in Lightroom, though, it doesn't matter because the sliders, this whole tab works in unison with itself. So it doesn't really matter if you move noise reduction before you move sharpening. It just doesn't matter at all. So you would just come in, and typically what I would do is I'd leave the sharpening on its default value of 25, at least just the way I do it. And then I would note where there's noise. And I could see there's noise in these planks on the house or on the cabin. And I would just move noise reduction to the right until it's gone. Right about there. And then I'll back it off until I see it again. I made note where it was. And then I would just kind of split the difference and go right in the middle. And then look, yeah, there's still a tiny bit there. So I'm just going to just tweak it up just a little. You're kind of zeroing in on it. So I got rid of the noise. Now I'm going to bring the sharpening up, and usually you could just jump it right up and get an idea where you are. Now I have noise right now. I could see it. One thing in my Lightroom videos, if you're really in a hurry, if you put sharpening around 70 and noise reduction around 40, for most properly exposed images, that will give you a decent ratio of sharpening to noise reduction that the image will look very good. So you could do that, and I do that a lot if I'm in a real hurry and the image isn't meant to be printed for a huge billboard or anything like that. Now in this case, right about there is fine. I got rid of the noise and we have enough sharpening, and I think it gave enough detail into the image. So the last thing I would do now is I would go down to the effects and I would add this darker vignette, which I prefer, and I'd say the image is done. All right, so this is done. If you're just a Lightroom user, this is what I would do to process the image. Now, you're a plugin user more like I am, then what I would do is I guess I would go back to about here in our processing. Nope, I'm sorry. We should go right to there in our processing. And then what I'll do is I want to go back to the basic panel. And vibrance and saturation are really high. We're going to take those down. And what I want to do is I want to get rid of these twigs right here first. Now there's some coming up over here which would be more difficult to get rid of because there's a lot busier background. We have a more uniform background here of the grass. I don't think these necessarily need to go because those aren't as noticeable. So I'm going to get rid of these by bringing it over to Photoshop. So I'm going to bring this over to Photoshop first. Then I'll bring it over to Nik Silver Efex Pro. So I'm going to edit in Photoshop CC, and then it will bring the image eventually over into Photoshop, I think. And there we are in Photoshop. And what we're going to do is I'm going to get the patch tool. And the patch tool at first won't look right, but we'll fix it. We're going to come in here and we're going to kind of highlight. Whoops, I went too far. Let me do that. So we're going to kind of highlight this here, go right across here, down here, down here, down there, go right across. And then we're just going to move our patch over this way, like that. And then we're going to hit Command D to deselect it. It didn't come out too bad. And we have this little piece here, so we're going to get rid of that. Bring that over there. Command D to get rid of that. And that doesn't look too bad at all. We have kind of a little bit of a squiggly here. Now what we could do is we get the clone stamp tool. You hit S on your keyboard, and you could like take a sample of an area. Let's say right here. We're going to hold the Alt or Option key in. Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac. It's sample right there. And then we could just kind of make that a little more like blended in, I guess. So we got rid of that. Now we have these branches up here. Like I said, I'm going to let those go because I think that would be a little bit too difficult to get rid of. So I'm going to bring it back into Lightroom. You could send it over to Nik Silver Efex Pro here if you'd want, but I tend to prefer to do everything from Lightroom. So we have our image in Lightroom now, and I'm just going to right click on the image and I'm going to go down to Edit In, and then I'm going to go to Silver Efex Pro 2. And you can see I send it over as a color image. I don't convert it to black and white first. I get that question now and then. I prefer sending it over as the color image, and we're going to go edit the original because I don't need to make another copy of this. I could use this original. And I think it gives you the last filter that you used or preset that you might have used. And typically that's all I use in Silver Efex Pro are the presets. I don't really rarely come over here and adjust anything myself because usually they have a lot of interesting presets that seem to, at least for me, are quite compelling. I kind of like that one. And I just click through, I look through here. I like push process. I don't care for that push process. I kind of like that one too. That's making the sky very, very bright though. There, that one right there. Graduated ND. I like that one. This one looks like the sky's a little more interesting. There now kind of at the other extreme. This is a little more higher key and we have some detail in the sky. Now I kind of like this only if it wasn't as bright. So I sometimes will take the preset and then I'll go over here to the sliders and I'll bring the brightness down. I kind of like that a lot right there. All right, so we're going to click Save. That's going to bring that over back into Lightroom. Now we're going to go back to this image, and I'm going to, oh, I messed it up because of the, because of the, um, there we go. If I just hit Command Z a few times, I'm back where we started before. So I was at my post-crop vignette right there. That's where I added the vignette. So this is my raw file, completely processed in Lightroom. This is the image that I took over to Photoshop to get rid of the twigs that were over here. And then I brought it over into Nik Silver Efex Pro to process it further. So that was a little clumsy of me. I apologize for that, but I hope that made sense. Now, one thing I did notice just looking right at it is if I look at this left one, this is the raw file that I processed completely in Lightroom. I like these bright patches. They seem to help lead you through the image up to the cabin. And you notice they're missing in this one. Well, we could always add them. We'll just get a brush. We'll get it reset. We'll turn on, make it brighter like that, like, just so we could see them. And then we're going to get a new brush, and we're going to turn it down, get a smaller brush, and kind of come up like this. So we have these past. That maybe looks a little bit too straight, too neat. So I would redo those. I just did it real quick. You see how this one's a little more messy, a little more natural looking. So we could come in here. Let's, for the sake of being a perfectionist, let's come in here like this. There we go. There. Something like that. Just adds a little more tonal variation to the grass and makes it that little bit more interesting than if it was just, uniformly, gray all the way across. So that's it. Again, this is the Nik Silver Efex Pro version, and this is the Lightroom version. And if you hold the Command key in or Control key if you have a PC and click on both of them, then hit the C key, you could compare them side by side. Hit Shift Tab and you'll get rid of all your tabs and you can better see them. So again, this one here on the left is the processed raw file completely in Lightroom, and this one here on the right is the one that was processed to a point in Lightroom. I brought it over to Photoshop and get rid of these twigs that were over here in the left-hand corner, and then I finished the processing in Lightroom, or in Silver Efex Pro to give it the black and white effect. I brought it into Lightroom, added some lines here, and probably to finish it off totally, I would add a vignette. So we'll go over here to Develop Module, and we'll go to Effects, and we'll add a vignette. So that one is done. Okay, I hope that made sense. That was, I kind of apologize. I was all over the place on that. I like to do these from scratch, not do them ahead of time. I think it helps me go like it helps me tell you my thought processes as I go through it. And sometimes I go down a rabbit hole and I might not like what I'm doing, and you get an idea of what I'm thinking when I do things like that. But it doesn't make for good video sometimes, so I apologize for that. So that's it for this episode. Thank you, Debbie, for sharing your image with us. Thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.